They say blood is thicker than water, but nobody warned me that sometimes blood can poison everything it touches. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my sister Jessica turned what should have been the happiest day of my life into a calculated nightmare, and how I made sure she got exactly what she deserved. Jessica has always been the golden child. 3 years older, blonde where I'm brunette, effortlessly charming where I have to work for every smile. Growing up, she collected achievements like other kids collected Pokemon cards. Valedictorian, prom queen, full scholarship to Yale. I learned early that in our family, there was Jessica's spotlight, and then there was everyone else scrambling for the leftover glow. But for once in my life, I had something that was truly mine. David proposed to me on a beach in Santorini, with a ring he'd saved for 8 months to buy. It wasn't the biggest diamond, but it was perfect. Just like him. For the first time since childhood, I felt like I was the star of my own story. Jessica's reaction should have been my first warning. When I called to share the news, there was this pause. Just a beat too long, before she squealed with what sounded like genuine excitement. "Oh my God, Sarah. That's amazing. We have so much planning to do. We should have set off alarm bells." Within a week, Jessica had somehow inserted herself into every aspect of my wedding planning. She knew the best florists, had connections with photographers, could get discounts at venues I'd never even heard of. Mom was thrilled. Finally, her daughters were bonding over something beautiful. Dad just smiled and wrote checks, happy to see his girls getting along. I was grateful at first. Planning a wedding while working full-time as a nurse is exhausting, and Jessica seemed genuinely excited to help. She'd show up at vendor meetings with color-coordinated binders, take notes in her perfect handwriting, ask all the right questions. She was like a professional wedding planner, except she was doing it for free out of sisterly love. Or so I thought. The first red flag came during our cake tasting. Jessica and I were sitting across from the baker, sampling flavors, when Jessica suddenly grabbed my hand and gasped, "Sarah, I have the most incredible news. Richard proposed last night." Richard was her boyfriend of 2 years. A successful lawyer, naturally, with perfect teeth and a trust fund. The baker immediately shifted her attention to Jessica, congratulating her effusively, asking about dates and guest counts. Suddenly, my cake tasting became Jessica's engagement celebration. "We're thinking a spring wedding," Jessica announced, her ring catching the light as she gestured. It was easily 3 times the size of mine. "Sarah, wouldn't it be amazing if we planned our weddings together? Like sister weddings?" The baker was practically glowing with excitement about the potential double booking. I managed to smile and nod, but something cold was settling in my stomach. My wedding was set for October. Just 6 months away. Spring would put Jessica's wedding right after mine. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, every conversation somehow circled back to Jessica's upcoming nuptials. At my dress fitting, she casually mentioned she'd already put deposits down at 3 different venues. During our flower consultation, she showed the florist photos of arrangements she was considering. Arrangements that looked suspiciously similar to the ones I'd chosen. "Great minds think alike," she'd laugh whenever someone pointed out the similarities. The worst part was how subtle it all was. Jessica never directly criticized my choices or openly competed. She was supportive, encouraging, always ready with a compliment or a helpful suggestion. But somehow, every vendor we visited left knowing more about Jessica's wedding than mine. Then came the guest list discussions. We were having dinner at Mom and Dad's house, going over seating arrangements, when Jessica dropped her bomb. "I've been thinking about the timing," she said, twirling pasta around her fork with studied casualness. "October to April feels like such a long wait. What if I moved my wedding up? Like way up?" I looked up from my notepad. "How far up?" She smiled that perfect Jessica smile. "November. It would be so romantic. A fall and winter sister wedding combination. We could even share some vendors, save money." November. 1 month after my October wedding. "Mom, be careful, Sarah. I love your family, but Jessica has a pattern." He was right, but I didn't want to see it. Not yet. I wanted to believe that my sister was just excited, that her enthusiasm was genuine, that blood really was thicker than water. I had no idea that Jessica's real plan was just beginning, and that my October wedding was about to become the opening act for the most humiliating performance of my life. But I was about to learn something that Jessica had forgotten in all her careful calculations. The quiet ones are always watching, always listening, always remembering. And when we finally strike back, we don't miss. The first real attack came 3 months before my wedding, disguised as sisterly concern. I was at work, pulling a double shift in the ICU, when my phone started buzzing with texts from Jessica. "Emergency," the first one read. "Call me now." My heart stopped. In my line of work, emergency texts usually mean someone's dying. I stepped into the break room and called her back, hands shaking. "Sarah, thank God." Jessica's voice was breathless, panicked. "I just got off the phone with Delilah's Flowers. There's been a mix-up with your order." Delilah's was the florist we'd booked for my wedding. A sweet woman who ran a small shop downtown. Jessica had recommended her, naturally. "What kind of mix-up?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "They double-booked your date. Another bride put down a deposit for the same day, and apparently their system glitched. Delilah is beside herself, but she says legally, she has to honor the first contract." I sank into a plastic chair. "So what does that mean?" "It means we need to find a new florist. Today. I'm already making calls, but Sarah, 3 months out. Most of the good ones are booked solid." Felt sick. Delilah and I had spent hours planning my arrangements. White roses and baby's breath, simple but elegant. She'd promised to grow special varieties just for my wedding. "But I signed a contract," I protested weakly. "I know, sweetie, but apparently there was some fine print about system errors." "Look, I'll handle this. I'm going to call every florist in the city if I have to. Don't worry about anything, just focus on work." When I got home that night, exhausted and defeated, Jessica was waiting in my living room with a stack of business cards and a laptop full of wedding photos. "I have good news and bad news," she announced. "The bad news is that everyone decent is booked. The good news is that I found someone who might be able to help." She turned the laptop screen toward me. The photos were stunning. Elaborate arrangements that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Orchids, peonies, roses in colors I'd never seen before. Her name is Vivian Cross. She's normally booked a year in advance, but she had a cancellation. The thing is, her style is different from what you originally planned. Different was an understatement. Where my original vision had been simple and romantic, these arrangements were bold, dramatic, expensive-looking. They were beautiful, but they weren't me. "Jessica, these are gorgeous, but they're not really my style." "Sarah." She grabbed my hands, her eyes serious. "Trust me on this. I know it's not what you originally wanted, but Vivian is a miracle worker. She's done celebrity weddings, governor's daughters, Fortune 500 CEO parties. If you book her, your wedding will be in magazines." I looked at the photos again. They really were incredible. "How much?" Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "That's the other thing. She's not cheap. But Sarah, this is your wedding. You only get one shot at this." The price she quoted made me dizzy. It was triple what I'd planned to spend on flowers, money that would have to come from our honeymoon fund. "I can't afford this, Jess. What if I helped? As my wedding gift to you. I'll cover half." I stared at her. Jessica had never been particularly generous with money before, but she was looking at me with such genuine concern, such sisterly love. "You'd do that?" "Of course I would. You're my sister." So I said yes. I signed the contract with Vivian Cross, and Jessica wrote a check for $1,500 on the spot. I felt guilty about it, but also grateful. Maybe I'd been wrong about her motives. Maybe she really was just trying to help. The next incident happened 2 weeks later. I was at my final dress fitting when Jessica called, crying. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "What's wrong?" I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "What's wrong?" "It's the photographer, Marcus Chin. He's been in an accident. Marcus was the photographer I'd booked based on Jessica's recommendation. His portfolio was incredible. Artistic black and white shots that looked like they belonged in museums. Oh my God, is he okay? He's alive, but he's in the hospital. Broken ribs, concussion. He's going to be laid up for months. I felt the room spin around me. My wedding is in 6 weeks. I know. I'm already working on solutions. I have a friend who knows someone. But Sarah, I have to be honest with you. Finding a good photographer this late, it's going to be nearly impossible. That night, Jessica presented me with another miracle solution. A photographer named Blake Morrison, who specialized in lifestyle and documentary wedding photography. His work was different from Marcus's artistic style. More casual, more candid. He's actually more expensive than Marcus, Jessica explained apologetically. But he's available, and his work is really authentic. Very natural, very real. I looked through Blake's portfolio. The photos were fine. Nice even. But they lacked the artistic flair I'd fallen in love with in Marcus's work. Still, what choice did I have? Okay, I said. Book him. The pattern continued. My caterer had a family emergency and had to cancel. Jessica found a replacement who specialized in rustic farm-to-table cuisine, instead of the elegant plated dinners I'd planned. My band broke up after a messy dispute between the lead singer and the drummer. Jessica's solution played contemporary acoustic covers, instead of the classic jazz I'd requested. Each time Jessica was right there with a solution. Each time she was genuinely apologetic about the changes. Each time she contributed her own money to help cover the increased costs. And each time my wedding became a little less like the one I'd dreamed of. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was addressing invitations when Jessica called with the worst news yet. Sarah, you need to sit down. What now? It's the venue. Rosewood Gardens. They're being sued. Rosewood Gardens was a historic mansion with beautiful grounds where David and I had planned to have both our ceremony and reception. We'd fallen in love with it at first sight. Sued for what? Food poisoning. Apparently there was an incident at an event last month, and now the health department is investigating. They're shutting down all events pending the investigation. I dropped the invitation I was holding. Jessica, my wedding is in 3 weeks. I know, sweetie. No. But listen, I might have a solution. Course she did. Richard's family belongs to Ocean View Country Club. It's beautiful, right on the water, and they had a cancellation for your exact date. The thing is, it's more formal than Rosewood Gardens. More elegant. More expensive, she meant. How much more? Double. But Sarah, it's Ocean View. Do you know how exclusive that place is? The waiting list is usually 2 years. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I asked the question that had been building in my mind for weeks. Jessica, isn't it strange how every single vendor I booked has had some kind of emergency or cancellation? There was a pause. What do you mean? I mean, what are the odds? The florist, the photographer, the caterer, the band, and now the venue. Don't you think that's a little coincidental? Sarah. Her voice was gentle but firm. I know this is stressful. I know it feels overwhelming. But sometimes life just throws curveballs. The important thing is that we're handling it together. She was right. It was stressful. Maybe I was being paranoid. You're right, I said. I'm sorry. This isn't how I imagined my wedding would be. I know, honey. But trust me, it's going to be beautiful. Different than you planned, but beautiful. So I booked Ocean View Country Club. I paid double the price for a venue that felt more like Jessica's style than mine. I told myself it didn't matter, that all that mattered was marrying David. But that night, as I lay in bed next to my sleeping fiancé, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. I just didn't know how wrong until it was too late.